Good morning and good afternoon, white people. You are probably not going to like me. If you are a conservative white man, you're probably not going to like me at the end of this episode, but welcome to another episode of the Cover2Cover Podcast. I am your host, Jaron Bingham. Before we jump into the depths of the conversation, I need you to like, I need you to share, and I need you to subscribe for all book-related content. I also need to give a spoiler alert. We are diving into some fiction work today. Without further ado, we are diving into Cebo Campbell's 2024 fiction book, Sky Full of Elephants. And so I'm going to read the back of the summary, my good man, real quick. One day, a cataclysmic event occurs. All of the white people in America walk into the nearest body of water. A year later, Charlie Brunton is a black man living in an entirely new world. Having served his time in prison for a wrongful conviction, he's now a professor of electric and solar power systems at Howard University when he receives a call from someone he wasn't even sure existed. His daughter, Sydney, a 19-year-old left behind by her white mother and stepfamily. Traumatized by the event and terrified of the outside world, Sydney has spent a year in isolation in Wisconsin. Desperate for help, she turns to the father she never met, a man she always resented. Sydney and Charlie meet for the first time as they embark on a journey across a truly post-racial America in search of answers. But neither of them are prepared for this new world and how they see themselves in it. Heading south toward what is now called the Kingdom of Alabama, everything Charlie and Sydney thought they knew about themselves and the world will be turned upside down. So yes, Cebo Campbell, 2024, dropped this novel about white people walking into the middle of the ocean. That's how the book started, and I was immediately in love. But in today's episode, I am fortunate to be sitting with the head man of the Seen and Heard book club, Mr. Johanse Thomas. How are you doing today, my guy?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me, man.
Of course.
Looking forward to this for a while.
For a while. Can you tell people a little bit about Seen and Heard book club before we jump into the pod?
Yeah, so of course, got to rep the brand, but the Seen and Heard is a book club that I co-founded with Khalil Lawal, one of my good friends, around 4 years ago. We really started off honestly during the depths of COVID. Needing an outlet to talk about what's happening. Just have a sense of community, even in the midst of so much uncertainty and whatnot. So, it really started as like every 2 week conversation we would have around different things that we're reading, essays, articles, what have you. And, we soon saw a market, or at least friends would want to join those conversations, and it's been able to grow ever since. So, at this point, of course, we have our Atlanta chapter. We just opened a DC chapter.
Okay.
A few months ago, so of course looking to expand and do more things like this.
Okay. Well, yeah. Again, man, I appreciate you giving the time today. I appreciate the book recommendation. This book made me feel very good. And so with that, we're just gonna jump straight into question number one. What made you choose the book?
Yeah. So crazy enough, I can't even take full credit for choosing this book in particular. As a part of the Seated Herd, we have a collective book recommendation form that we have, that helps to pick our reads. And this is one of those books that surfaced and one that people wanted to read and fell in love with. So, shout out to the group, of course. But I'm really glad that we did pick it, right? And I think given, of course, what's going on in society now, I think it was timely.
Yeah.
When we did read it, and I felt like it had a lot to give us in terms of conversation that I know we'll get into today, and a lot to chew on.
Yeah, most certainly. So I read the back of the book for the audience, but to just kind of give an overall synopsis of what the story is. Sky Full of Elephants, it follows Charlie and Sydney. So Charlie was locked up for 20 years. He was locked up for a rape charge in which he did not commit rape, but he was falsely accused. The daughter from the conception was Sydney. Essentially what happens is that the book references white people walking into the water as the event. And the book starts that way. It talks about the event. Charlie, we find him to be a professor at Howard. He gets a phone call from his long-lost daughter. He goes to Wisconsin. they kind of have some back and forth, and ultimately she's like, hey, I need to go down to Orange Beach. I need to go down to Alabama because one of Sydney's aunts had reached out to her after the event. And so for more context, the event is all the white people in the United States of America walked into a body of water and drowned themselves. So now we are in a world where we are in a country where it's just black people exclusively. So yes, Charlie and Sydney are kind of just going throughout the states trying to figure out more about themselves and then more about their environment. And then also we see another story developing of Jose and Vivian, who are the king and queen of Alabama. Yes, I'm saying Alabama. Yes, Alabama. But essentially, that is the world that we are living in. And the only reason I kind of really painting those contexts is because the questions that we're going to be answering are a little bit more open-ended. And so I'll be kind of referencing along the way to kind of keep people up to speed. So with that, we're going to jump right into question number 2. My good brother Johan says, Sky Full of Elephants is filled with symbolism. Can you speak to the symbolism that spoke to you the most?
Well, I guess I could just start with the title, right?
Yeah.
Sky Full of Elephants. It's kind of a paradox, right? But I think as the story unfolds, you get a sense of, dreams and nightmares and memory and what it means to different communities in terms of liberation, in terms of advancement. I think even in terms of an elephant, right? There's so many symbols caught up in that one image, a sense of memory, right? Elephants don't forget anything. Of course, African. Elephants being in the sky in this case is kind of like, okay, well, why is that happening?
Yeah.
So I would say in a lot of ways, I would say the elephant. I would say this idea between us and them, right, and how that interplays with different communities, different interactions that you see throughout the book. I think that held a lot of symbolism as well. How do we conceptualize us? How do we conceptualize our community versus either the enemy or someone who isn't us?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot there too.
Yeah. Mine was the exact same answer. The answer is in the title. Sky Full of Elephants, and I ended up bookmarking a couple of pages that I wanted to read from it. One was from page 96, where Charlie he's in conversations with Harold. No, Harold's in conversations with Charlie. And he says, I've always thought of it like a sky full of elephants, Harold said, absently, as though he weren't speaking to Charlie, but to different versions of himself. It's up there, been up there, heavy too. All wisdom and memory and sorrow. A weight so heavy, it would damn us all if it came down. But you can't see it until you see it. No matter how many times I tell you they're up there, you can't see it until you see them. And then it's another chapter or another page I wanted to jump to was page 204 to kind of follow that up. And he says, the signal of our fractured consciousness, all of the emotions, the memory, the vengeance heavy as the storm in the sky. It's a message, a feeling, a signal. It's everything we felt and couldn't say repressed in a frequency. And then there's another thing within the story too, the radio. So for the audience, as Charlie and Sydney are, after they've made it to Alabama, Charlie links with the king, Hosea. And Hosea is working on this radio frequency to kind of uplift black consciousness and kind of get everybody connected. Because at the earlier parts of the book, after the white people have drowned themselves, there was a comment made that there was somewhat disorganization, something of the sort, because people are just kind of like figuring out this new world. And so the radio was one of the forms of symbolism. But back to the Sky Full of Elephants, that memory, that wisdom, and that sorrow, it speaks to black people in America in real time. And it's funny because as I was doing my notes, I may have brought this up on a different podcast, but everybody remembers that Montgomery boat brawl, like when.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, and it was funny too because I can only speak for myself, but I feel like I can also speak for all black people. When I sit back and say, I feel like every black person in America saw that brawl and was just like, damn right. Yeah. And they just felt it because it was just one of those things that it's we've been pushed around too long. And, back to the sky full of elephants, where that thing that's hovering over our head is so heavy. It's memory, it's sorrow, it's upliftment, but it's so many different things that you can't ignore it. I'm going to seldomly, I kind of chat a little bit. I'm going to seldomly mention some of the talking points from people, white people specifically, that I've heard before about ignoring kind of like race relations in order to kind of get past it. And I'm like, how can you, that makes no sense. Right. If we ignore race relations, then how can we explain certain things to our kids later on down the road? Like if my 10-year-old comes up and says, Dad, what's an HBCU? Then I have to kind of go into the depths of why HBCUs kind of came to be. Dad, what's a Martin Luther King Boulevard? Like, who is this Martin Luther King guy? Then I'm gonna have to go into why Martin Luther King was so specific. So right. I think that the title, when you first had recommended the book, I was like, Sky Full of Elephants, it just sounded so weird. Yeah. But as we kept reading, I was like, oh, okay, so it's legit like a dark cloud over us that is just so heavy with all of the pent up history that has been that white America has tried to brush under the rug. Right. That I think later on in the book they were like, if it were to rain down, then it would be destruction. But that was, like I said, that was part of my notes. I went, for the audience, I went crazy on the notes. Listen, if you give me a book that tells me that white people let me be quiet. Be quiet. If you give me a book that says white people walk into the middle of the water at the first chapter and it's just black people for the rest of the book, then I am going to be talking in great lengths. And then also, Quay Sean gave me 2 shots, so I may be a little rambunctious. I'm gonna pull one more quote from the book, okay, and then I'm gonna do a little bit more free flowing. I'm jumping to page 238 where. Who's talking in this one? They say, everywhere is, all around us, fractured, but connecting us, inspiring us, giving us hope. It's every repressed emotion we've pent up over centuries. And again, I've read so much of Black history over the past 3 or 4 months, really, to where I often think if justice is going to be served, who's serving justice for the nameless Black people that were taken advantage of, whose lives were, taken from them, whose kids were taken from them? How does that justice served over the centuries? And that's why this book was so joyful for me to read, was because in a way you get to see, okay, Black people get their clean slate, especially even with Charlie, and we'll kind of dive into that with the next question. Yeah. Of course, I relate to Charlie as a Black man, but Charlie being able to shape his own identity once the story starts, especially after the 20 years in prison, was one of the things I was like, it just really moved me, because as Black men, do we ever get the opportunity to shape our own identity in white America? Right. So, yeah, God is a just God, and justice is coming. So that's all I have to say about the symbolism of the book. There's just so much symbolism in general, to where I just found myself flipping through the pages. Like, all right, I had to kind of narrow it down in order to kind of really come up with a concise answer. And that was probably like a 10-minute ramble, but nevertheless, you got any other things of symbolism that you want to speak on, bro?
Yeah, maybe we'll probably get more so into this, but when you speak of identity, right, I think the book does a really good job of kind of just showing you I'm not going to say an argument, but the complexity of what that looks like, even for Black people, right? Because sometimes it's in this us versus them war, right, which I think is the main symbolism in the book. Sometimes we do lose a lot of the nuance, right? Yeah. And that's something that we argue against white America about a lot of, you don't see the intricacies of everything. Yeah. Right? But even in their absence, we start to see that, okay, well, maybe there are factions of us that still want to dominate other Black people, yeah, right? And in different ways, even though it doesn't look familiar. So maybe not to answer your question, we'll probably get more so into that, but not so much the symbolism, but I think just a key theme that
Yeah.
just kept coming to my mind of just identity and what that means.
Sipping on some good tea, talking about life in Black America. Sky full of elephants. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into question number 3. What message did you receive from the father-daughter relationship between Charlie and Sydney?
That is complicated.
Yeah.
I would say that's the main message. To kind of go back to your point on being able to create your own identity or having the lack thereof, right? So for Charlie in this case, being falsely accused, being in prison for X amount of years, and really just having his own narrative taken.
Yeah.
And, his lineage and everything else, not having a sense of him being present there, and how does that affect Sydney's identity and also his own. I think there's just so much tied in that dynamic where we see, of course, a father-daughter relationship where, of course, a father, like anybody else, wants to provide and protect for the person that he loves, but wasn't able to do so in the way he would have wanted. And then, of course, Sydney, not having the full context to the story, and I'm sure we'll get into that with her mother and the trauma thereof, but her also feeling abandoned in that situation and wanting to reconcile and wanting to find a sense of what it is her identity is, right? Because in this case, she's biracial. She, has lived in a certain context for so long that to be now jarred to a new one, or literally have her family walk into the river, now all the questions come back of who am I and what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
So.
That was, like I said, identity was the main thing that I got from both of them. And as you said, it's with these two different characters, Charlie falsely accused, losing 20 years of his life, and then this miraculous event happens, and by the way, your daughter hits you up out of nowhere. She's 19 at the time. And it's you're having to play catch up while at the same time having to understand this new lay of the land. And then, even with Sydney to be biracial, with Sydney, let me go to my notes before I just start rambling too much. I said many characters throughout the book. Mentioned both Charlie and Sydney's identity crisis. Though the topic of self-identity is universal, the book speaks to the biracial identity crisis of Sydney and the Black male identity crisis of Charlie, who was incarcerated for 20 years. How do they navigate this? Both characters are on a crash course of understanding themselves in this new world, understanding each other, and coming to grips with their own history. So with Sydney, she grew up in this exclusively white environment. And she is essentially taught that white is right. And there was a section in the book, quick one, where she says her white mother, Elizabeth, her mother had always called her special, and no matter how often her mother made the claim, nor even the sincerity with which special was uttered, she always heard special as different. And so there is, in the story, when the event happens, Sydney gets a letter from one of her aunts that says, if you're still alive, come holler at us in Orange Beach. And so Orange Beach is essentially where all of those biracial or those one drop of Negro blood individuals had headed down to. I didn't mean to be so rambunctious. And so that was, so of course, as you can see, if for the listening audience, I am a light-skinned individual. Both parents are definitely Negroes, but I can only imagine the true inner turmoil that someone who is biracial in a Eurocentric America is going through on any given basis. You're not accepted on one, you're not truly accepted on really kind of both spectrums in its own way. I mean, Black people are more forgiving than white people. But I'm telling you, right? This episode, somebody gonna throw a brick at me when they see me one time. I'm telling you. But with Sydney, I even though she would frustrate me throughout the book, and at times it was like her uncertainty used to just irk me. Yeah. Again, she's 19 years old, so she's lived damn near 2 decades with this understanding in this white family that, black people are other, but at the same time, she's different as well. So you don't fit in with your own family. Your mother, who's vaguely told you about your father, you don't really have a relationship with him. So how do you navigate this new terrain where you literally saw both your entire family walk into the pond, and then now you have to call somebody who you don't even know if he'll even pick up. You don't even know what he looks like.
Right.
So, to have to deal with that, I've always, I'm not going to get on no Umar Johnson. on the Umar Johnson rant. Look, Umar Johnson be talking his shit every once in a while. But there's times where I'm like, it's, again, to be in the psyche of someone who is biracial. I often think, what are some of their biggest battles? And I think Sydney was a well-written character to kind of highlight what some of those battles are under these circumstances, even in a completely black America. And then with Charlie, jumping back into the book, I'm gonna go to page 40 real quick. Charlie, early in the story, he kind of comes to the realization, like I said, that he can kind of shape his own identity. It says, he didn't have the words to tell her about all of those years of being nameless and in shackles, and what all of those years taught him to believe about himself. He could never fully answer the equation of who he was or could be, but all he was to his daughter was an emptiness he could fill up with any version of himself he wanted. And when I read that, I thought it was so beautiful because, again, it's, as black men in America, in this real America that we walk in, our identity is, we kind of, it's the veil, the double consciousness that W.E.B. Boyd talks about, right? Where you're this one person in front of the public, and then when you're able to be in the private and you're able to let your hair down, it's like, okay, now I can really be my authentic self. Whereas for all intents and purposes, white people don't have to do that.
Right.
And so that's what made me gravitate to Charlie so instantaneously, because I was like, I just love the fact that, his history being what it is. I just love the fact that he was able to sit back and now be the author of his own story, even with the kind of the conflict with his own daughter. And so the conclusion to that answer I put it was, their constant internal struggles to figure out themselves over time strengthens their father and daughter relationships and consequently prepares them both, specifically Charlie, to fulfill his overall purpose for the people. Because as they go throughout Alabama and as they mix and mingle with the king and queen and the Alabamians and their families, Charlie is in a position to where he can help the king get that radio transmission kind of up to speed and help connect the black consciousness. And so he was my favorite character. We'll get to my favorite character in a quick minute. But I really, that was the father-daughter component of it really, to me, spoke so much to identity. And so do you have any follow-ups on that before we jump into question number 4?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways we can take that, right? I think when you talk about, of course, what Charlie meant to his daughter, or let's take a step back, what he meant to her in the absence.
Yeah.
I think that's really where we kind of see her fight, right? That's really her internal conflict of, I've been told a small narrative of who I could be, in a way, like to what you were saying, but this is who I am with my mother and my family as it exists today.
Yeah.
Right? So we kind of see her go along that journey, both figuratively and literally, right? Because them leaving Wisconsin, going to a new place, and coming into interactions with other characters. In this case, we kind of see that, right?
Yeah.
Both play out internally and externally.
She was fighting for a long minute, bro. I felt like at least 75% of the book, it was just kind of like contention. But I guess even in a way, with such a transformation and an evolvement, it takes that time, which is one of the reasons why I was able to, even though she would irk me throughout the book, I was able to build more compassion for her, because even as she would come in contact with Nona, who was the queen's daughter, and even the queen herself, Vivian, she was able to see black women who were able to live in their full, authentic self. They affirmed her. They affirmed her identity. They affirmed her existence, despite all that she was going through. I think even at one point in the story, they had like washed her hair, and then the curls had puffed out. And so there was this kind of overall physical, spiritual, and even mental washing of like everything that she had been taught hitherto.
Like a baptism.
Yeah. She did go through a baptism. So there was a lot with her character and the other characters in which she was involved with that I appreciate it. What did you think about City just in general?
I mean, she hurt my nerves.
Yeah.
Much like you. I'm like, pick a side. I mean, are you with them or are you with us, right? Like, what are we doing?
She didn't like that word "us" though,
or
they, or it was one of those words. So she was just kind of like, I think it was they.
I think it was us.
Or it probably was us. Yeah.
Yeah, because like her father would be like, "We're about to go," or this is us, something like that.
Yeah.
But I think for her, it was a matter of piecing that together, like psychologically, right? Because her reference point to us or we has been in this context, right? With white people, and them has been, maybe black people down the road or whatnot. So, we get a sense of what that looks like for her. But I would say outside of that, I think Charlie did the best that he could in terms of, trying to affirm her, also trying to establish where he fits into her life, right? Because you kind of see him go through that dichotomy of, I'm her father, but I haven't earned the right to, lead her or to tell her this is right.
And I like the fact that he didn't. I like the fact that he didn't press that so much. He allowed it to happen. He wasn't like, "Well, I'm your father."
Right.
He was more so just kind of like, he was real chill. Yeah.
He was real chill. And I think she needed that space, to go through her own cycles, her own internal battles of who I am. Because honestly, what kind of took me aback a little bit in the book is that they get to Mobile, Alabama. We see the utopia, we see the color, we see the food, we see the dancing, and she's like, nah, I still need to go to Orange Beach though. Like I still need to slide. Like I'm like, everything is so good here.
Yeah.
Why would you want to why would you even want to still go there? So that in my mind kind of, I'm like, come on now, just chill out. Like
I was like, I'm like, everybody is kind of paving a way for you, and it's all right. It's time to go on a little rant.
Yes.
This rant is brought to you by the Cover2Cover Podcast.
When black people are so forgiving, and I love that. At times it can be a little annoying.
Annoying as hell.
But I think that black people's capacity to do any and everything is so substantially greater than other races that even our ability to forgive is greater than other races. And with that being the case, that's to the point I was like, Sydney, I'm like, everybody around you is rooting for you. Everybody around you is helping you, assisting you along the way, but you still want to go to Orange Beach? It's... Okay. I'm not going to get too much of a rant right now. That was just kind of what I wanted to put out there. For all the conservative white people who love their Jesus and love their God, black people do it way better. And I'm not cutting that out. We're not going to get my brother Young Hanse in trouble, though. All of my thoughts are my own. All my opinions are my own. You need to read Skyful of Elephants. But I'm sorry, bro.
No, you good.
If anything, it was. I'm gonna blame Quay for that one.
It was me. It was me.
That's just the first round. This next question is gonna probably really invoke a lot of this next question is
pages.
So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into question number 4, and continue my black nationalism ideology push.
It's MLK Day on Monday.
It's MLK Day.
Come on now.
You know what I mean?
Come on.
Martin Luther King died for our sins. Okay, number 4. Let me get serious. I'm sorry, mother. I'm sorry, grandmother. It's blasphemous. I understand. Question number 4. Black consciousness is one of the main themes throughout the story. Can you speak to who or what expressed black consciousness to you the most?
In the story?
Yeah.
So for me, I think when I think of black consciousness, I think of a culture, right? And how I define culture is people like us do things like X, right? So when we go down to Mobile, we see that in full color, right? We see, a king and a queen, which, it's its own setup. I thought, okay, we're not democratic anymore. Like, okay, we're gonna take it back. But we see a sense of community that I think our community does a really good job of carrying on, right? A sense of belonging. Honestly, because we've needed it. We all we got, at the end of the day. But I think we see that in a way that is uplifting. It's not based in trauma. It's not based in a sense of lack. It's based in a sense of joy and a sense of togetherness. And, we really want to see each other succeed in the best of ways. And for me, I love that part. It made me kind of think of Wakanda and, all these other like utopian black states of mind, right, that we dream of, right, and that we want to see happen and want to see come true. So there's that aspect of it. And then, of course, there's everything else that we know, right, of our lived reality, the trauma, the exploitation, the invisible man, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, where you feel like your identity is only but an object, only but a thing and not a person at the end of the day. So I think in a sense of combining those two things, right, where we have this sense of dream world that we want to go after, but this heaviness that always holds us back. Yeah. I think that's, at least in my mind, that's how I conceptualize black consciousness. But I think sometimes, and the book does a good job of, not only talking about the theme of identity, but also connecting that to a sense of memory.
Yeah,
right?
There's a lot of ancestral conversations.
Right, a lot of, getting a sense of what was so that I know what is. Yeah. Right? And I think, and this has happened throughout history. It hasn't only been black people, but what tends to happen is that you have a dominant group that takes over another and they erase their sense of history. They erase their culture, their language, their traditions, right? So that person doesn't have a sense of continuity over time. And because of that, you get someone who's lost. You get someone who is very susceptible to what it is I tell them that they are and not who they've self-authored themselves to be at the end of the day. So, throughout the book, we see this charge towards almost getting back to a certain place, right? So we can move forward. Radio signaling in, creating almost like a time machine to connect back to something that was us in its most purest sense.
It's, so again, for the audience, the radio that we're talking about, there were two separate instances in which the radio was played. The first time caused the event that for white people to walk into the water. And the second time was near the end of the book when Charlie and Hosea they had kind of come to an understanding that, hey, it was so powerful that they wanted to, at first they didn't want to do it. But Charlie and Hosea wanted to push it because they knew that it would, like you were saying, it would connect the past and the present together. There was a vast amount of, like we said, ancestral conversation, which, my answer I put was Vivian. So Vivian was the queen of Alabama. She was the queen of this new world. She was the most measured and respected character, in my opinion, in the story. And the thing that I liked about Vivian, so again, kind of catching people up who haven't read, if you've watched this episode, if you're this deep in the podcast, you should have already read the book. And if you haven't and you're just kind of going along with the flow, then God be with you. But so Charlie picks up Sydney. They first head to Chicago, from Wisconsin to Chicago. They fly from Chicago to Vicksburg, Mississippi. They are then picked up along the way by one of the sons of the king and queen and then taken to Mobile, Alabama. Sydney is like, I want to go to Orange Beach. I want to go to Orange Beach. And even to, like you were saying, like, the oppressors want to wipe out the history, whereas with this new world, at least the queen was generous enough to make an Orange Beach for those biracial individuals who were like still kind of on the fence of what they wanted to do. So again, it shows that capacity to be understanding and still want to provide for everybody, despite different ideological perceptions.
And even just to touch on that, like it kind of took me that they would bring food to them and provide them this and provide them that without any sense of reciprocity. I was like, what?
Everybody in Orange Beach was really like, we're not like them. And the black people in Alabama was like, okay, but here's your assistance, here's your food, here's your water. Yeah. So it was still this this like true, genuine, lovable leadership from the black people in Mobile to want to do right by everybody in this new circumstance, which again speaks to the depths of love that black people inherently have. And so Vivian, like I said, Vivian was a wonderful representation of that. And the more that you go throughout the book, the more that you understand her story. She was a civil rights activist in the South. She had 3 boys and 1 young daughter, Nona. And she said the thing with Vivian, her story, so she was a civil rights activist. After she has her kids, she's kind of asking herself, can I genuinely raise these children in America? When she realizes that the answer is no at the time, her and her husband, Hosea, go down to Haiti for 3 years. And that is where a lot of the culture is really embedded and kind of unfolds in all their lives. They bring that back to the States. The radio happens, white people walk into the water, and then they start building up Alabama into this kingdom. Looking at my notes real fast. By the time of the event, Vivian and the family are back in the States, Queen of Alabama. Throughout the story, we see Charlie and Sydney journey throughout the South, and Vivian, it's like, so yeah, even with the story, you have Charlie and Sydney's story, and then, like I said, underlying that is Vivian's life. So there's a few times in chapters with Vivian where she's thinking, or she's saying, like, let them inherit the earth. So you can see the genuineness in her leadership capabilities, where she's like, I want to make this world better for my children so I can let them inherit it. And to me, that's the things that I liked about it. She was able to, the things that I really genuinely loved about it was she delegated her task within the society responsibly. She has the power, but she never abuses the power. And she also she never uses her power to abuse other people. And she was very much tapped into her history. Like I said, the Haitian Revolution. She would always talk about that with her children and Charlie and even Sydney. And so even to your point about black consciousness, when you have, I'm sorry, hitting the mic, you have black pride, you have self-reliance, and then you have this liberation. Vivian as a character embodies all of those things. She was never demonstrative. She was never abrasive. She's the most powerful person. But she never was overbearing to the people in which she was over, if you will, or governing.
Stewarded, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it speaks to, it's time for rant number 2. It speaks to today's leadership and why it is important to have good moral leaders.
Elaborate, please.
I'm really I'm really not trying to go down too many crazy rants.
I mean, we can talk about that point. I don't know if that's.
Oh no, it's trust me, bro. I don't care.
Okay.
I really I try to be as thoughtful as possible. But okay. I mean, over the past 2-3 months, we've had the commander in chief, the president, sit back and say, I think the Civil Rights Act hurt white people badly. Then you have the vice president come out at AmFest and say, you no longer have to apologize for being white. This is all within the past 2 or 3 months. And I'm sitting back reading this book, and I'm like, all right, bro. You know, this is year 250 in America. I don't think a white person has ever had to apologize for being white a day in their fucking life. And it pisses me off because it's like J.D. Vance, with the position, again, the power that he has, he uses it to manipulate poor, uneducated white people and, of course, the self-hating Negroes. And they're going to take that and they're going to just have this like white pride, like they've just been oppressed. Okay, I'm calming myself. Let me take a little sip of tea.
I mean, I get exactly where you're coming from. I mean, sometimes I'm taken aback by just how tone deaf, not even tone deaf, just a sense of just not knowing things.
Yeah.
And I think that really speaks to a history where there's just a sense of distance. I think that's really what happens, right? You know, I think of Martin Luther King, right? I think of his I Have a Dream speech. A lot of what he talked about was literally closing the gap, closing the distance, having white people and black people and Asian people sit at the same table, right? And just have a conversation. And I think how little that happens nowadays, right? You might meet them in the workplace. You might meet them through a screen, right? TikTok, Instagram, and that doesn't give a sense of brotherhood. It doesn't give a sense of relationship in the truest sense. And I think we see that reflected in our leaders, right? We see that reflected in JD. We see that, of course, the Orange Man. There's just a sense of entitlement, of course, but just a very a sense of distance that they don't want to close.
Yeah.
If we're being quite honest with you, you know, I think what we're saying is that come and see, come and look at the community, right? Come and look at
everything we've done in spite of.
And
it's if we can work together. If I don't understand why white conservative people, look as if helping their own citizens is problematic to the country overall. You know, it's in spite of 300 years of chattel slavery, in spite of Jim Crow, segregation, redlining, crack epidemic, mass incarceration, underemployment, like welfare abuse, legit government agencies out to kill, neutralize black leaders. In spite of all of those things, we are still here, and yet you're still trying to find reasons to get rid of us. Why? I mean, my younger brother knows I'm about to go be the true Israelites, but I'm not going to go down too far down the road. But it's one of those things where I'm like, if this people that you are trying so hard to get rid of is still here, I can't understand the mental gap. Well, I can't understand it. Again, when you have, you know, when you're kind of caught up in political and celebrity worship, you look at these politicians as if they have all the answers, which is crazy. But it's disheartening at the same time because there's no follow-up from the individuals, right? So like a J.D. Vance will go out and say, you know, you don't have to apologize for being white in America anymore. And white people will literally be like, yeah, like, that's right. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, why don't you want to like at least, I'm not sitting back saying you got to go to the 1800s to do research. Dog, just look at the 1960s. The majority of our parents, grandparents, aunts, like operated during those times. You think black people were just agitating the system because like we're just provocateurs? I don't get it. But you know, they
don't want to get it.
And that's the thing.
I think that's really, you know, the answer. It's like I said, I don't even think they want to get rid of us. I think they just want to keep us contained.
Yeah.
I think that's, at least in my mind,
they want to profit off of us.
Right.
It's one of those things.
They need your labor. Yeah. They need your ideas. They need your cultural capital.
Yes.
Right.
Black culture is the most profitable, tangible and intangible of America. Don't care. You argue with your great aunt. Don't give a fuck. Sorry, Mom.
Exactly. Right. So, but there's a reason why they'll let you, you know, sing the song, but they won't let you own the record. You know, there's a reason for that, because there's a sense of we own and you contribute.
And you perform. Yeah.
Right? And I think what we're saying is that we want to move past that.
Yeah.
We've been here. We've contributed for hundreds of years, if not thousands.
And even when we were owning ourselves, you came in and destroyed what we owned.
And that's really where the hard line in the sand is, I think, where, you know, books like this help to have conversations like we're having around how do we piece together a world where everything that we do isn't in reaction to what they've done to us.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the foods that we eat, the places that we live, right? Like a lot of what makes America or Black America what it is, right? For the beauty that it is, of course, through struggle. But on the flip side, it's been in the shadows, right? It's been to the side. It's been, like we're saying, contained and restrained in the worst of ways. So, you know, when they ask in the book, like, okay, well, all right, now that they're not here, okay, who do we get to now be, right? And I think we start to see ideas of that through mobile. We see other ideas of that through Orange Beach too.
Yeah.
You know, as much as we don't like it, it's still an idea that exists, and it's still one that deserves the choice of existing.
Can you speak a little further into, because even when they were in Mobile, one of the bigger events that was happening in the book was Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And they, you know, Mardi Gras had to happen at a certain time for the radio frequency to kind of really be in full effect. Ultimately, what is your take on ancestors in history? I know that is a very vague question, but what were some of the things about the ancestral history in the book that did you appreciate?
Well, I did appreciate the concept of Mardi Gras being in Mobile.
Yeah.
That took me down a whole rabbit hole by itself of just understanding that apparently that's where it originated, right? It wasn't in Louisiana at all. It actually originated in Mobile, Alabama. And then digging a little bit further, you get history on why it existed. You know, it does have some European, background to it, but you get a sense of, like everything else, the context by which, you know, other people place it and what other people give significance to it for.
Yeah.
So when I think of, you know, ancestral history, right, which is very broad, I think of there's a way of being that can inform us of who we should be, on how we should act, but we're not chained to it at the same time, right? So when we have July 4th or like any of these like American holidays, it's like, yes, you can celebrate, but you cannot celebrate. But it still stands there as a memorial, right? That something significant happened here. And I think that's the significance, I think, of ancestry, being able to tell folklore stories and things of that nature, is because it gives a sense of significance that sometimes is often lost.
Yeah.
Often lost.
He was,
at the end of the day.
Though it was a fictional book, Cebo was dropping a lot of like historical jewels in there. So yeah, apparently the first Mardi Gras did take place in Mobile. He had said something that it made me kind of go down a rabbit hole. He says in the book, and he also says it in a couple of interviews, he was like, if there was no Haitian Revolution, you would not have the America of today.
Mm-hmm.
And rant number 3. So with that, and I'm really paraphrasing what he was saying, but of course the Haitian Revolution, small island, French colonialism, Haitian slaves were like, yeah, we tired of this. And complete revolution, kick your little Frenchies out, go back across the waters. Tie that into America. So the American Civil War was an economic war. You had the South that was their economic power was slavery, and you had the North whose economic power was industrial. This, the North kind of, the North knew. Here's the thing about history. You can kick it down all you want to, bro. It's still there. Of course, your American history is only going to tell you about, Denmark Vesey or Nat Turner. Yep. It makes you only think that, since 1619 all the way up to 1865, there was only 2 slave rebellions. Calm it down, bro.
Calm it down. All the way down.
Then listen, bro. If you are not educated enough to know or to think that black people weren't kicking up shit for those 200 plus years trying to get their freedom, be it individually or collectively, you need to do more research. All that to say, when the Civil War was brewing, the South was like, we're keeping slavery. The North was like, we want the economic advantage, but we really don't want to be fighting niggas all the time. And so then the Haitian Revolution happens, and the North is like, yeah, we definitely don't want that. So then the Civil War goes into place, and then that's when you have the America that we have today. So again, black people saving America yet again. Calming myself down. I appreciated Cebo mentioning that. I appreciated the constant references to the Haitian Revolution, the Haitian people, the Haitian culture, and how Vivian and Hosea were taking a lot of what they learned when they were down there in Haiti and bringing it back to Alabama. Yep. The society that they were building was one legitimately for the community. Everybody had a role to play, and their role, the basis of the role was service. How can you be of service to the community? And so that was, again, it's, despite how, from Sydney's perspective, despite how everything has happened up to this point, now that you have come across these people, they've had every opportunity to take advantage of you. They haven't done it once. If anything, they've led you to further self-exploration that has made you more grounded in who you are. And it speaks to the vibrancy, and that word was used a few times. Vibrancy, frequency, like these things that you can't necessarily see, but they're kind of in the air. It speaks to, I guess, the essence of being black in America, which is, again, what I truly appreciated about the book. I love ancestral studies, ancestral history. I just love seeing black people I love seeing black people take their 5 loaves and 2 fish and feed thousands. And so that is so funny. Boy, I will curse and then use a biblical reference. It was the alcohol. It was the spirits.
Balance.
The frequency. Which is funny though, man. It's so with a lot of my reviews, I'll watch. So of course you read the book, notate it accordingly, and then I'll watch 4 or 5 different interviews from the author.
Yep.
And it was funny because as we were talking about culture at a certain point. Cebo had said something to me that was pretty funny. I only wanted to say it because I just thought it was hilarious. He said he was talking to a white associate one time, and he told the white associate, he's like, "Yeah, I feel you." And the white associate was like, "You feel me?" And it was one of those things like, "Yeah, bro, it's small things like that."
It's small.
Like if I sat back, I could tell my little story. I was talking to one of my little white associates. I was like, "Hey, go holler at that person real quick." It's like, "You want me to scream at him?" I was like, "All right, bro." So it's so funny because
back it up.
the more I get into books, the more I'm like, yo, what is this thing that is blackness? Like, what is this thing that just makes the 48 million people here in America just so spiritually wealthy, despite the Eurocentric oppression of them? And so it continues to need to be studied. Which, listen, white America, you can throw away DEI, you can get rid of critical race theory all you want to. It does not matter. It does not matter. It's still going to be here in the air. Sky full of elephants is still going to hover over us. And that's the thing that I appreciate about being black, is that, you can sit back and be upset with a Martin Luther King, but it's like, what is he doing? He's just literally being nonviolent and telling everybody to love everybody. You could be upset with the Malcolm X.
Crazy.
You could be upset with the Malcolm X, but he's just kind of like Malcolm. He's talking about self-defense, which everybody is, a part of, or has a strong belief about. Right. So you can try to poke the holes, and have these character assassinations of our leaders in our history. Don't matter, bro. And like I said, the reason it doesn't matter is because God is a just God, and he was smiling. Listen, man, it is. Just continue going my rants. I've only seen one other story in the history of mankind that is similar to black people's. You can find it at the top of the Bible. But to not get too crazy with that, it's. Honestly, I don't want to get you in trouble, bro.
Say how you feel, man. That's why we're here.
Well, have you guys talked about the book and seen and heard?
We have.
What was the kind of general consensus with everybody?
Well, I would say, much like you, there was a sense of fuck white people. It was a lot of that. But I think, and this is a perspective I wouldn't have taken by myself, but I feel like the end of the book did us a disservice in a way.
I am eager to hear this.
I feel like the end of the book, and I'll speak for myself and then I'll give a general consensus. I think for me, a book that comes out this strong, that has such a POV in a scenario that, as a black man, yes, you want to kind of see how this plays out. You want to see the black hero take off into the sun and, do his thing. And I think for the book to end in the way that it did, it gave very much, kumbaya, all lives matter, kind of like take it as you will.
Yeah.
You finish it. And I don't know, I felt like that kind of did us a disservice. And that was kind of the consensus in the group of the ending just felt flat.
Yeah.
It came out strong. It had, like you said, like we're discussing, right? There's so many dynamics. There's so much history and so much context to these types of issues that for me, for the book to end with, we just gonna turn it on and we'll see what happens.
I'm in the water, wading in the
water. We'll kind of see what happens. I didn't particularly like the end of the book.
I can see that. I can. Yeah, when I was nearing the end and she was at the ocean, I was like, okay, what's gonna happen?
Right.
And I like. Now that you said that, you actually have me thinking a little deeper. I liked how it led up to the end. I like when the queen was just kind of like, when Nona was just kind of like, let Charles choose if we can use the machine or not. Mm-hmm. Because, for the audience out there, so they get this, the radio, take a couple steps back. Let me let the alcohol kind of sort myself out of my mind. So for the audience, after Charlie, Sydney get down to Alabama, they are there, and Charlie's task is to help Hosea fix this machine so they can run it again. And when they run this machine again, it just brings a level of connectivity of the black consciousness across the world, if I'm not mistaken, right? Not just Americas.
Yeah.
So as they're getting to that point, Charlie's like, wait a minute, this machine is just too strong. It could, for all intents and purposes, destroy the world. Mm-hmm. And so there was back and forth between Charlie, Hosea, Vivian, the queen, and then Nona, the young daughter, came out and was like, well, let Charles choose, or let Charlie choose if we're going to use this machine or not. And I like the fact that this man, at the beginning of the story, we see that he has no choice. Like everything is, he's being told what to do. He was a inmate, and even though he became a Howard professor at the earlier parts of the book, within the first year of his release, there was still this. He was still kind of operating as if somebody else was telling him what to do, and I can only imagine too, what that the psychological impact of 20 years of incarceration does to a person. Right. And so for him to be able to have the decision to ultimately connect Black people consciously across the world was something that I was like, okay, I rock with that. As I'm near the end, and I'm like, okay, Sydney's continuing to drive out west. I'm like, well, where are we going with this one? So yeah, I can understand what you mean by that. So by the time she nearly gets to the end and then the machine is turned on, what was fascinating was that after he turns on the machine, trumpets start sounding. And so it's almost like, in its own way, symbolic of the return of Christ, or something of the extent of, it's like this spiritual awakening of the world. So almost when Black people collectively and consciously come together, there will be a spiritual awakening of the world, which, I don't know if that was Cebo's ultimate point, but as I'm saying this out loud, I feel like, he may or may not have been aiming in that direction. And so I wouldn't say the ending was underwhelming, but at the same time, when Lil Mama went to the ocean, I was just kind of like, all right, where are we going with this? Or where are we going with this? This was the end of the book. I was like, okay, it was a very, I still, you asked me off camera before, what would I rate the book? And I said it was 5 out of 5. And I still feel that way. Just because, like I said, the overall journey throughout the story didn't seem forced, and it didn't seem as if it dragged on. But yeah, the ending was something where I was just kind of like, okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
We'll take it. And I will say the ending of the book, how it ended, at least for me, kind of took me down a whole nother rabbit hole, and I'll kind of just give the highlights. But so for me, leading a book club, having, of course, other perspectives and a sense of almost in a way how these books are made. What I saw, at least for this book, is that, and he actually talked about it in one of his interviews, kind of giving thanks to his editor. So I was like, okay, I was like, who is this editor? I got to see what she looks like. And it was a white woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's why the book ended like that.
Fair point.
So, and mind you, that's a whole nother topic for another day. But I think there has to be something said about Black publishing, white filtering, and the stories that creates. But we'll leave that for later. We'll leave that.
I mean, you said it earlier. We sing the songs, but they own the records.
Yeah.
And so it's Cebo Campbell. I appreciate the work. If I ever have the opportunity to meet you, God is good. But yeah, I am. It's with a white editor. I wonder how. I
just want to read draft two. I just want to read draft.
In fact, Cebo, give me one of them the earlier drafts.
Give me draft 1, draft 2.
Give me one of them earlier drafts so we can so I can kind of really see what you would really kind of headed. Yeah. My man, let's hop into question 5. We've been rocking. We've been rocking. Question 5 is the question I always ask all the guests at the end. If you could recommend this book to anyone, who would it be?
Well, I would recommend this book to Black people.
Yes.
Of course. I would recommend this book to white people as well. As much as I don't think they would read it, I think this is one of those books that you leave the book with more questions.
Yeah.
Right? Than answers. And I think that's good. That's good, especially for topics of this nature. It needs to be an ongoing discussion. Yeah. It needs to be something that we contemplate, that we constantly bring to the forefront of our minds, because things like this, honestly, because of the weight of it, the heaviness of it, they get swept under the rug. Yeah. They get put in the corner, as the elephant in the room. So, shout out to Cebo, of course, for, being bold, being imaginative, and, giving us a conversation that's worth having.
Yeah. I mean, I echo those same sentiments. I think that, again, there's 48 million Black people in America. I think that this book needs to be purchased 48 million times. It speaks to the holistic experience of Black people, from history to identity, community to well-being. I genuinely did enjoy the read. It's refreshing. It wasn't heavy. If anything, it was entertaining. And then, of course, it puts you in the mentality of, well, if America was just all black, what does it look like for us? And then individually, what does it look like for me? So then you remove the book from it, and then it's like, okay, well, individually, what am I doing for Black America now in this current circumstance that I have? But I think this book, it sparks great conversation for Black people to kind of get a better understanding of what does community really look like in 2026 with the types of assault from federal, state, and local governments. How can we continue to support each other, even through our own differences, like a Charlie and Sydney during that time? You know what I mean? It's how can we continue to show support to our neighbors, to those that we disagree with. It was interesting. I'm not going to go down too many personal roads. But it's a couple family members who I'd be eager to hear their opinion of this book, only because far from self-hate Negroes, far. But at the same time, we just love white people a little too much, in my opinion. I'm just kind of like, hey, it's they all right, but they ain't us.
Where are you from?
Mississippi.
Makes sense. I'm from South Carolina, so I get it.
Yeah, man. It's bro. Yeah, this book, I think it's gonna really. I'm eager to see what it does over the next few years, and yeah, man, I genuinely did love this read, and I appreciate the recommendation.
No,
I appreciate you sitting down talking with us, man. Sure. If the employer gives me any problems,
it wasn't me.
Any other words for the people, man, before we go ahead and wrap things up, my brother?
No, I mean, again, thank you for the opportunity. I think conversations like this are worth having, right? I'm glad that you've been able to create a space, an environment where we can talk candidly. Yeah. We can share ideas and something that's longer than a TikTok. So, of course, I'm here to support you in any way that I can, and just know that you're doing God's work. So we appreciate
I'm gonna be dropping all seen and heard handles and everything in the description of all the videos. Atlanta, and you said
and DC. Yep. So if you're interested, you can find our page at the Seen and Heard on Instagram, and look to join the community.
Black people, I absolutely love you. White people, y'all okay? Y'all got a lot of learning to do. Crazy, because y'all are the ones in power, but you still got learning to do. This has been another episode, Cover to Cover. Sky full of elephants, Cebo Campbell. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in today. Don't jump in that comment section talking crazy, because I don't give a fuck. God is good. God is good. You're going to have you a wonderful day. This was a wonderful episode, Brother Yohase. I appreciate you joining me today, man. Another episode of the Cover2Cover Podcast. Y'all stay blessed and stay in the book or stay out the way.